Hello everyone and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. At the beginning of May I did a video of my journey into fantasy covering the first 4 months. I'm considering to do a similar video every 4 months. So with August almost behind us, it is time to give you an update. How did I fare the first 8 months of my journey into fantasy? First of all, I am enjoying myself immensely on this trip. Even though I made a few sidesteps this month with a short spiritual book and one book of letters, my interest in reading fantasy books hasn't shown any wear nor tear. Every time when I stand in front of my TBR bookcase for fantasy, I pick up 10 or 15 books and can't wait to start reading them. So this journey is still continuing with as much fervor as in the beginning. Let's browse through my bookcases and see where I stand at the moment. I'll only mention the changes on the shelves that have occurred during the past 4 months. So on the first shelf of the in total 7 shelves I have in my TBR bookcase of fantasy, nothing much has changed. Let's compare it with the picture I took 4 months ago. And the only change we can see there is next to Joe Abercrombie, there is 2 books left at the moment of the trilogy of 5 of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is a new addition to my bookshelves, and of the 5, I have already read 3. Moving on to shelf number 2, we can see a bit more of a change here. First of all, the Belgariad. In the picture you can see only the 4 books, as probably I was reading the first book at the time. The Belgariad, the whole series has been read by now, and I did a full review on this series of 5 books. In the top picture you can see 2 editions. The first is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And the second, I'm not quite sure if that qualifies as fantasy, but I have the novel Stonehenge by Bernard Cornwell. I've heard a lot about this author because of his Warlord Chronicles. Those are 3 books about the Arthurian legend. And I'm particularly interested in ancient stone circles, so I'm going to give Bernard Cornwell a try with this book and see where it takes me. The rest of the shelf remains unchanged. Shelf number 3 is, compared to the older picture, a full shelf. That is mainly because I had to move a lot of Robin Hobb, up to this shelf. The one and major change here is that 4 books are missing, and these are the 4 books of the Riftwar saga by Raymond E. Feist. I've read this series in June and also did a full review and was very enthusiastic about it. This is the only change on shelf number 3, apart from the move of the Robin Hobb books, of course. The comparison of the 2 pictures of shelf number 4 is a bit confusing, perhaps, because back in May I only had Robin Hobb on shelf number 4, and she has been pushed up a shelf, more or less. So it's best if I show you shelf number 5, the way it was in May. From what these pictures can tell us is that the only change has been done in the Wheel of Time. In the old picture there are 7 books left for me to read, and in the meantime I've read 3 of them. The Path of Daggers, Winter's Heart, and Crossroads of Twilight. And I'm afraid to say that it is, as all the booktubers say, these are the reading slum books, especially The Path of Daggers and Crossroads of Twilight. Winter's Heart I enjoyed very much, but the other 2, they don't stand up to my reading enjoyment of the other books of the Wheel of Time. Let us switch to the updated picture of my shelf, number 5. Because there are some changes after the Wheel of Time, as you can see. I've got some new additions. First of all, 2 books by Guy Gavriel Kay, The Lions of Al-Rasan and Tigana. I've been alerted to Guy Gavriel Kay's masterfully writership, so I need to check that out. Second is the series The Gentleman Bastard by Scott Lynch. I've heard great things about this series, so I definitely have to read that as well. Next, there are no changes in George R.R. Martin, and neither are there in Terry Pratchett. On the next shelf, number 6, there are a lot of comings and goings of books. The first new acquisition is Brandon Sanderson's Arcanum Unbounded. I bought this book, which is a collection of short stories and novellas, because I wanted to start reading Brandon Sanderson in the most perfect possible order. One of the booktubers, Captured in Words, convinced me of the best reading order for all the Cosmere books by Brandon Sanderson. The best starting point is Mistborn Era 1, and that is one of the changes in the shelf, as you can see. I have read Mistborn Era 1, and I did a review, a full spoiler one this time, on this amazing trilogy. The two other changes on this shelf are the addition of Mistborn Era 2, because if I'm going to read the whole Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson, why not buy them all at once? The only thing is I haven't bought the 4th book in this series, which is The Lost Metal, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of waiting for the mass paperback edition on this one. And then the second edition is Warbreaker, the standalone novel, which is also set in the Cosmere. And then on the full right you can see Arc of a Scythe by Neil Schusterman. I was convinced by Mike's book reviews that I should read this young adult series, so looking forward to that one very, very much. Then finally, in my TBR bookcase, shelf number 7, very little has changed here, except that the last 2 books in the series by Ted Williams, Memory, Sorrow and Thorn, has finally arrived. So nothing is holding me back to begin reading this series as soon as possible. Let's move on right away to the shelf of the books I've already read. Instead of 7, I have 1.5 here. Well, maybe 2 with a little bit of imagination. Everything we see here has been mentioned already in the first part of this video, so we'll go through them very quickly. Okay, so the changes here are the first 3 on the left there. You can see the first 3 in the series by Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. These I've been reading very recently. Another series I've read is The Belgariad by David Eddings, 5 books in total. Also new on this shelf is the Riftwar saga, and there are a few more books in the series of The Wheel of Time. These are the 2 on the main right, that's The Path of Daggers and Winter's Heart. And the third one, The Crossroads of Twilight, is not in this picture, but I have read it. And then finally, the last shelf of the books I've read. And here, the Mistborn Saga Era 1 is the new addition to this shelf. So that's my overview of the read book and the unread books. Let me give you a brief reminder now of where I stood after 4 months. My TBR bookcase at that point contained 129 books, and I had read 17 books in the fantasy genre. In the video, I mistakenly said that I had read 18 books, but luckily no one noticed, or at least no one mentioned it to me. If I translate those numbers into percentages, the balance between unread and read books is 88.4 versus 11.6. My goal is to tip the balance in favor of the read books. This should be possible because I have one firm rule. I'm not allowed to buy any more fantasy books than I can store in this one bookcase I have. So far I'm obeying my own rules because looking at my buying frenzy the first 4 months of this year, I bought 136 books. These last 4 months I've been taking it much easier with 30 books altogether. Ultimately, of course, I want to have read all the books on my TBR, but I'm quite sure that last goal is wishful thinking. So how's the balance 8 months into my journey? My TBR bookcase now holds 131 books, just a little bit more than the last time. And then I don't even count all the books in the other genres I still want to read. I just counted them and I'm almost embarrassed to say the number. In the other genres, I have 208 more books on my TBR. That makes a total of 339 books. Insane, right? Perhaps now's a good time to downsize that a bit. Anyway, back to fantasy. I've read a total of 36 books since I started this journey. In this number is also included a short story by Brandon Sanderson, The 11th Metal, which I haven't even mentioned so far. It's only 21 pages long, but I didn't know how to include it otherwise. So, 131 on this side and 36 on that side. Translated into percentages, the balance between unread and read books is 78.4 versus 21.6. Actually, that's a huge improvement compared to 4 months ago, if you ask me. Just to make very clear, I am enjoying myself immensely so far. These first 8 months have been a journey filled with beautiful discoveries, breathtaking landscapes, wonderful language, wisdom, you name it. This genre enriches me greatly, and I'm thankful for that. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.